into it.
Okay, no, so we were just talking about how we don't like her. She's very mentally unstable. I think that she's trying to help everybody around her, but she also, I think, needs help because it seems like she's also struggling with the fact that, like, she has resentment towards her parents, and then, like, maybe a little bit that she resents her brother because he's an American citizen, but she's also an undocumented immigrant. And so it seems like there's, like, a funny relationship there. And then both a funny relationship with both of her parents. Like, her dad is her hero because he went to work, and then she despises her mom because her mom stayed at home and took care of, like, the kids and dad. And so, like, I don't know. And she puts more of the blame of her parents leaving her in Ecuador on her mom than her dad.
I also feel like she just has so much internal guilt because her situation, like with her going to college and everything, like she knows that she had some advantages that other undocumented Americans did not. And I think that's kind of why she has this whole savior complex.
Yeah.
And I think she also hates the fact that she has the savior complex. And so I think it's a continuous cycle of her self-harming from that.
I was just gonna say, I hate how, like, well, yeah, I don't like her. She's annoying. She's been annoying me this whole life. I don't like her whole, cause I don't know if I mentioned this last time or not, but I think I did. I love saying, like, I'm, like, educated. I love saying, like, I've been to school, like, I went to school, I have a degree. I hate how, like, she is so adamant on pushing, like, going to college, and I feel like so many people in this book, she's mentioned it so many times. I think the very last chapter, chapter 5, she was trying to push it onto her brother, where we were kind of talking about how she, like, kind of, like, hates her brother. She's like, I'm never gonna speak to you again if you don't go to school and da-da-da, all this stuff. I hate that. Like, I understand where she's coming from, because, like, going to school, it ultimately, like, will, like, you do get paid more if you do, even if you have an AA, like, if you look at the stats of it, like, there is, like, a small, like, pay increase in someone who just, like, got, like, their high school GED or whatever. I hate that, because I will never, ever, ever, even though I love going to school and, like, I'm about to graduate, we all are, like, I will never judge someone for, like, not going to college, not going to school, like, if they just want to work as a waitress the rest of their life or something. Because the way I view it is, like, if you go to that establishment, like, somebody's got to do that job, right? So, like, I just hate how she was really pushy about the whole, like, because she went to Harvard, everyone else should go to Harvard or Yale. I don't like that. Like, I didn't like that. And, like, good for her for being able to, like, afford that opportunity to go to, like, Harvard and, like, going to school. And I understand that a lot of people do not have that opportunity. I just feel like the way she was going about it was kind of just coming from her own, like, self-hatred, where she was like, you should go to school, like, you have to do this because, like, there's so I don't know, I just didn't vibe with that
comparison. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying she was advantaged, but she did have certain advantages because she was obviously extremely intelligent and was able to get, you know, the funds for school. She was able to do that. She even said her brother was not like that at all. Like, even if he were to fully apply himself, he's not going to be given the funding to go get a degree from Harvard.
Right.
But
So
she
it's
resented
like,
him because he didn't have to, because he's an American citizen.
Which is just annoying, because she's so, like,
right,
her internal
these student loans.
Right.
Like, I feel like that's
Yeah.
just continuing, like, a cycle of poverty. Like, why would you be pushing that?
But then she just, I feel like she reflects it back to herself about her whole just, like, I don't know, like, her whole deal, like, within, like, herself, like, where she's like, I'm downing my, like, Clen Open and I'm gonna go try to, like, swim in the ocean. Like, she just, like, is so, like, where she was talking about, I think the last chapter where she was talking about how her dad had to, like, come and save her off the, like, her bathroom floor, and there's razors around her and, like, beer bottles, and she just, like, that just, like, seemed so, I'm sorry, I think she's very whiny, and, like, I don't mean that in, like, a negative sense that, like, because again, like, I think I said this in, like, our first or second video, like, I used to be on antidepressants, I still have them, like, all that stuff, so, like, I do resonate with her in, like, certain aspects about, like, you know, her mom, like, my mom left me, so, like, I see, like, parallels between me and, like, her, but, like, she's just so, like, whiny about it. I feel like she has disconnects, like, with the world, where it's, like, very just, like, me, even though she's trying to help others. I feel like she's still just so, like, me.
Because it is for selfish reasons. It's because of her
Like,
guilt.
Well, so I wrote a note on so we started on chapter 5, on page 119, I wrote a note about this quote, and she says, it's about the boys, I contact their lawyer, I want to help these children, I say, I want to become their role model. I write the boys a letter through their lawyer. The first generation of immigrants come to this country to work hard. They often suffer and are treated badly. Do you know why they do it? For their children. That's us. It's up to us to honor our parents' sacrifices by doing better than they did, by having better lives than what we saw growing up. So I'm here to tell you that the best way to do that is through education. I'm brainwashed. And so it's very like, she says, I want to be their role model. I want to help them. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I tell them like they need to do education like I did. And it's hard for me. Like I get she's trying to be helpful, but I think it's really hard because I feel like she needs help too.
She does.
And so it's really hard. She wants to save everybody, but she also needs help. And there was another really, something that goes really great with this, and I have to find it.
She also talks about how she like numerous times in the book she's like, I don't like kids, I don't want kids, and then she's over here like, I'm gonna save everyone, I do this. On the very last page she goes, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. And I do feel like, again, like I understand her whole like trying to save everyone, but I just see it in such a whiny manner, the way she projected it, at least in this book. Maybe in real life she's very different, but the way she comes off in this book, I just see it as being very whiny and at certain times for her own selfish purposes, if that makes sense. But like, yeah.
I don't think this is the quote I was looking for, but I think it builds off of this. On page 228, I noticed we talked about like social comparisons.
Wait, what page?
128, sorry,
Okay.
did I say 228? We talked a lot about social comparison in class, and she did a little bit of a downward comparison, comparing herself to the boys. So she said she was writing down a list of rules for the boys, and I write them a card, I set it up on the computer, it says, study hard, and I tell them the school got me out, that can get them out. Out of what? The ghetto. I grew up poorer than I remember, but I remember with 2 parents. I grew up with nightmares, but they're living through the nightmares. And so she's like almost trying to compare like whose life is worse.
Yeah.
So she's like trying to make herself be like, I think she's trying to make herself not only feel like be like, well, their situation's worse than mine, so like they need the help. So I just thought that was like a little social comparison she was doing. It wasn't necessarily to like uplift herself, but just to remind herself of like, if I thought my life was hard, their life is way harder, so they need somebody like me. So I just thought that was important to know.
Yeah. What did you guys think of, because I think I heard earlier and when everyone was here, you guys said like the very last chapter was probably the most important one. I arguably would say my favorite chapter of this whole book is in chapter 5, and I'm curious to see, like, I felt like that one was the most heartfelt, like with like the girls and like the sanctuary at the church, like that whole chapter I actually really liked a lot. So I'm curious as to like what your guys' opinions were on chapter 5. Because I would say like Lionel and then Francisco, like the sanctuary, the girls, like that was by far I think this chapter alone, she was the least annoying and whiny, and I actually felt like she like cared about the people that were in the sanctuary, and like, you know, being like kind of a mom figure to the girls with her and her wife, even though she was like, I don't ever want kids, I could never do that, but then she's like taking them out to dinner, buying them like Christmas gifts, because like their dad is like, you know, staying in the sanctuary. So like I'm curious as to like your thoughts on chapter 5.
The ankle monitor was new like stuff for me. Like I didn't know that was like a thing. And so I wrote a note I wrote a couple notes on page 122, sorry, that I said so much for a free country, this man is being treated like a prisoner, and it talked about how like it made his mental health so bad. And so I said America is known for really poor mental health, but we preach like we're trying to fix it, but then we're doing things like this. And then she goes on at the end of the page to talk about like his life, and then the mom's life. It says Patricia sometimes takes English class after work. She comes home in the evening, she's always tired, but when she gets home she cleans, cooks, sits on the couch, runs her fingers through her daughter's hair while she draws, and blah blah blah. She goes on and on and on. And I said, it seems like in every story she's written, the immigrants are working way harder than the average American. Not that this is by choice, the system makes them have to work way harder to achieve the exact same things. And I thought that was important.
It maybe, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I thought one of the most important pages was like 126, 127, but it's kind of talking about like what actually happens with the kids and like, you know, whoever else relative wise that are still here if someone gets deported. I like that there are actual statistics provided, and it wasn't just her ranting, and although like her ranting is necessary sometimes, I feel like for that to really hit as heavy as it does, like the stats kind of needed to be shared. And also, like I'm specifically talking about like kind of like that first big paragraph on 127.
Oh, where's like the.
Yeah, with like how, if the dad gets deported or like if both get deported, like the children go from being raised from either two parents to one parent, or they become orphans in foster care. And then it ties that into like high rates of PTSD and things like that. So it kind of connects to what the textbook should have included. But I don't know, I feel like especially where that's kind of very relevant right now too.
The girl's story on 144 was a lot similar too. I made a note that I said, this is another key example of how ACEs affect, which is, I'm like drawing such a blank, adverse childhood experiences and how they're gonna impact them through adulthood. Which is like what we're seeing in the author too, is like she experienced adverse childhood experiences, and now going on into later in life, she has struggles with a lot of like connection problems and like attachment to others. And
I think it's also sad that like, so like Johnny, the little boy, I think when his father went into the sanctuary, he was like super very young, and then a couple years have gone by now, and he doesn't know that like that person is his father. Like he does, but then he doesn't. I forget what page it's on, but
it is 144.
Where it is 144, where he's like, he knows this man in one life, but then he doesn't know that he's his father, but he does. So it's just so weird that like he doesn't know, like, oh, he's getting his donut for this like random man.
It says,
but before he knew it was his dad, and it's so crazy, and I thought that was so sad. And also like the girls where like they address the author and the wife as like mom now instead of like their actual mom. I was just like, oh my gosh. But like the boy thing, that I thought was, you can find it.
it's right here. It says, for Johnny, it's happening with a narrative that escapes his confrontation. So he disassociates. He's begun calling a man, talking about a man named Francisco, who is his father, and about a man named Daddy, who is also his father. So when we go out for pizza, he wants to bring a slice back for Francisco. Francisco is somebody who can go hungry if food is not brought to him.
Yeah, that is like so. It's just because he's been in the sanctuary for so long. It's just like gotten to a point where he's like, I don't know who this man is, and then like, and like I don't know. And the girl's just like always like calling them like moms now and stuff. It's just like, cause like it does like mention like their mom like somewhere in like the beginning, and it's just like, well, I know the mom is going through stuff too. I mean, like her husband is now in like a sanctuary, so like not obviously not on like the kid's fault or anything, but it just goes to show, I feel like, how like ICE and like immigration and stuff is really like torn apart families, because like now this kid doesn't know that's his dad, but he does know it's his dad, and like the girls like are like sobbing every night over their father who is stuck in this church because he can't come outside. If he steps outside, like he's going back home.
Well, so when you lose a parent to like either being like stuck in the church or deportation, a family's income is, one of the stats was like you lose 70% of your income, because whether like you're only losing one person that's working, but then the other parent has to take care of the kids full time and isn't able to work as much, and yada yada yada. And then the cost and the time of trying to get the person either back home or out of like their savior, a sanctuary place.
Oh yeah.
I was like, wait, what's the word?
Yeah, I just find it crazy because I feel like America is always preaching like protect our children, and like everything that we do is not protecting any child.
I'm curious as to, because I think I might be interpreting this wrong, but at the like end of the book where she's talking about how, like her parents, specifically like her dad, they've always done everything like for her and her brother to like keep them happy, and now it's like their time to make them own like they're like themselves happy. And I don't know if it's just the way she was describing it in the book, but she really made it sound like her parents hated being in America and that they were gonna go back home like once they like retired, like back to Mexico, because like she was like, that's where they want to go back to, like that's where they feel like they belong and stuff. And so like I don't know if I was interpreting it wrong, but at least the way she made it sound was like they hated being in America, and I'm like, why is she putting that in the book when her whole thing is like the opposite? So I don't know if I was just like, the way she was describing it was weird to me, or like
the way I interpreted it was that they did, but like they kind of were more there for the kids to have opportunities.
Was it? Because it sounded like she made it seem like, oh, they're like sick of America, like I don't want to be here anymore. And I was just like, what? I started to get like really confused. So I'm like, why is she like describing it like that?
I understood it as like she was like they sacrificed their whole life and like just for us. And so on 148, the bottom paragraph of that, I wrote that was a very impactful statement. It says, it's a twisted inversion that many children of immigrants know is that at some point your parents become your children and your own personal American dream becomes making sure they die or they age and die with dignity in a country that has never wanted them. This makes for caring for our elderly different from Americans caring for their elderly. For one thing, most available jobs for undocumented immigrants are jobs Americans will not do, which takes healthy young migrants and makes them age terribly. And then she goes on and on to talk about how like the cons, because they don't get Social Security, they don't get a 401k or retirement of any kind. They hardly have any savings because they're spending it on their kids. And it says, according to the Migration Policy Institute, around 10% of undocumented people are over 55 years old. So she says the country takes their youth, their dreams, their labor, and spits them out with nothing to show for it. So it's showing that they're either dying very young because of like poor manual labor conditions and resulting in poor health, or that because they're here for their work and they're getting paid terribly and having terrible savings, they're forced to go back to their home country. And it's just awful. I think it's so sad because she's like, now that my parents are unable to work, and she even talked about the people in the office that were interviewing for jobs, like the guy that was in a wheelchair and the guy that was like in his 70s, they have no choice but to work until they die. And it's just so sad because she talked about another kid whose family moved home and back to Mexico with the same amount of money that they had in America, and they lived an awesome life. They owned a house, they had friends, they had family. They just didn't have their son because he graduated, what was it, like Yale, and he was living the American dream.
The 21-year-old, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's just awful to me because they're doing this for their kids and they're not wasting their lives, but they're cutting it short because they're spending their lives working and then cutting it short because they're dying at a young age. So it's just like, it just made me really sad.
I feel like she would argue that they were kind of wasting their lives because like when she talks about her dad, towards the end, like kind of leaving and wanting to do his own thing.
Like the very last two pages, she's like kind of like, I hate, she's always hating on her parents. But like,
but then she was like, you know, like he should.
Mm-hmm.
Like
especially
hasn't lived his life at all.
That's what, like, she, like, I'm tired of living just for you and your sister, like, it's my turn to be happy now, but she's always, like, hating on her parents, like, where she describes them as, like, two dead, stagnant, like, fish in the water, and stuff like that, but, I don't know, like, I guess I do see the point now that you, like, mentioned, like, the whole, like, sass thing, because the way I read it, I was like, it just made no sense. I was like, okay, well, if they hate it, you know, like, what, but then that does make sense, but I wonder how, I mean, like, I know how different it would be, but I wonder how different it would be, because I feel like a lot of the reasons why people do immigrate here is because, you know, like, the education we have, I would argue our healthcare sucks here and is going very downhill compared to, like, other places like Canada and Germany and stuff like that, but, you know, like, the freedom we have, the healthcare, the education and stuff, so I wonder drastically, like, how different it would be if, like, other countries like this, like, had better opportunities.
I think the problem is that like all of those categories are very advanced, but they're not accessible. They're only accessible to the people in like the highest classes. So everybody wants to be like have like healthcare, technology, education, all of that accessible, and they think, oh, America is the place for it. But even the people that are Americans can't even get it to it unless you're in like the top 10%.
That is such a good point, because I don't know, like, late at night, I'll be watching something and I'll hear, like, a word that I'm unfamiliar with, or I love to just, like, look up, like, random things, but, like, there was one night where I was, like, looking at, like, a bunch of, like, different, like, doctors and, like, surgeries and stuff, and compared to, like, other countries, like, down in, like South America, it's 10 times cheaper. Like, if I, as an American, wanted to go down there and get, like, some sort of surgery done.
So everybody goes to Turkey for, like, their
like,
transplants and
whether
stuff.
it be, like, plastic or, like, like, whatever it may be, it's far cheaper compared to here, so it's just like, well, I know it's not like again, like, even here, like, you can barely afford anything.
Oh yeah, and it's not even an easy system to get insurance. Like,
it's not.
Like, this is like 3 or 4 years ago, I couldn't get it through my job, so I had to do it through Marketplace. Okay, no big deal. They told me that I didn't make enough money, so I had to do it through main care. Okay, I applied for main care. They told me I made too much money and I had to do it through Marketplace. So I had to keep calling back and forth to try and figure out who was lying to me. It's like, they don't make it easy. So I was uninsured for almost a full year because of that.
Exactly, and then it's like, I'm sure those phone calls are like, it's just so, because, I mean, obviously, like, it's not the operator's fault, but you just get so frustrated because it's like, well, what's going on? So like these people who are coming here.
It was the operator's fault.
Okay, it was the operator.
They typed in a random number for my income because they hadn't received my paperwork yet, even though they had. They just didn't know it.
So, like, just like it makes me. I wonder how many people immigrate here, coming like thinking America is this big and like better. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it's not a good country compared to a lot of like third world countries or a lot of other like countries. Like it is a good country in certain lights, but like I just wonder how many people like come here and think that like they're gonna have these vast opportunities, when now I just feel like
It's like a bait and switch.
it kind of is like a little like fishing hook. Like you know you catch the fish, like you reel them in, and they get here, and it's just like it actually kind of sucks here. Like there's not like, I don't know, I feel like especially now, like this book again was written in 2019, so a couple of years ago.
I can't remember if it was this book, the textbook, or the article. I feel like it was this book that like said something to the effect of like how, yeah, it was this book. I'm trying to remember how it was phrased and like the context it was mentioned in, but how like the United States directly has had the impact on the countries that people are now immigrating from to come to the United States.
It's just like, I don't know, like again, like I can't give this book like complete and total hate, because again, this was written what, like 7 years ago now, so like I'm sure 7 years ago, 2019, that was like right before COVID, so prime years, so you know, like those prime years. But now, like, I don't know, I wonder if she were to write this book today, I wonder how different it would be, because I just feel like, and I don't know if this makes me, again, I've already said it a million times, it makes me sound too, like, not that I'm not grateful, because I know a lot of other countries are, like, horrible, but I just feel like a lot of people come here, like you were saying, the whole, like, fish bait thing, thinking it's gonna be one thing, when in reality it's actually not cheaper, it's getting crazy expensive. People here suck, like the race, like it's not all it's chopped up to be. When people are like, oh, America, like it's this great, beautiful place, like I'm gonna leave. Even people who come from like Europe, oh, I'm leaving like the UK, I'm gonna go to America. Like everyone just thinks like America is like this great place. I feel like half the people think America is this great place, and then I hear like other half like I don't know if you guys ever hear about people say like how a lot of people hate Americans. I don't know if like you guys like are like familiar with that, but I always hear about how like other countries like hate Americans, like they think we're stuck up, like all this stuff. But I feel like 50-50 of it is like people think America is this great place, when in my own personal opinion, in reality it's really not.
I think this is just like my opinion with travel and stuff, post-election, a lot of people look at Americans like idiots right now. Like my mom and I just traveled we did Australia and New Zealand, and whenever everybody's like, oh my god, where are you guys from? You guys don't have like our accent, and you tell them like, oh, we're Americans, and they're like, oh my god, you voted for that guy? And my mom and I are like, oh my god, no. But like, that's what everybody's like.
They just stuck up, they like look at us, they're like,
They're
oh,
like,
yikes.
oh my god, your country is awful. And we're like, that's why we're here. We're like, guys,
literally. So it's just like, I don't know, I just like, I kind of wonder why, like, and that, I feel like that sounds bad of me to wonder, like, if I'm just gonna be so serious, like why did they come, like why do you want to come here? Because I think if I were in that situation, I don't know, I just wouldn't, because like now, growing up and just like seeing the way the world is like kind of turning into, I wouldn't, and it just makes me sad thinking that like all these people are immigrating here, thinking they're gonna get opportunities, when in reality like they're just being hated, they're being murdered, they're being like kicked out, like all that stuff. So I just think it's a very sad world.
I think it is a very unfortunate thing, but I also think of like the different perspective that we are very fortunate to not understand why that.
True.
Like, although we think our country isn't a great country right now, like I think we're very fortunate to not understand fully why people think that this is the best alternative for them.
And it's also still easier to come here than a lot of places in Europe or
That's true.
yeah.
That is very true.
It's more accessible to them.
Especially
Otherwise, I don't think it would be the first option.
no, and I think a lot of the people that she interviewed, she talks about people from, it was like Mexico, Puerto Rico, and Ecuador are the main places that she's talking about. And these are very like close places to us too.
I wish there was more, I don't know, again, if this is gonna be like crazy, I wish there was more different immigrants that she would have brought into this book, or like, I guess, interviewed. Like, I would have loved to see other people who have come here, or, from Africa, the Middle East, you know, out
I would like to see like a lot of
Asia.
European.
I would
I
have
think she
loved
just
that.
focused on Latin
She
America because that's what
focused
she's familiar with.
Yeah.
And I understand that, but
So
she
it's
does.
more with
She's
them.
like, they don't look at me like I am, because she says I'm one of them, they're one of me, like, she talks about us, because I think it's like undocumented Latin Americans, and it's because when she interviews them, she doesn't think like she's looking at them like people in a zoo, like, oh my god, let me like interview you and ask you questions. She, like, it's more of I understand.
I get that. I don't know. I just feel like she like at the very like end of the book, she like mentions like brown people a lot, and I'm like, I would have loved. I don't know. I think I would have loved to see more perspectives of different immigrants, and I love the perspectives that we got like already. I don't know. I think it would have been so interesting to like see the different like everyone else's perspectives on like kind of like immigrating here, being in America, like how they're treated. So maybe, you know, between races, between what country you come from. I think that would have been a really cool thing to like see like all the different like maybe are the Latin Americans getting treated way worse than, you know, people who come from Europe or from Asia, like how are those immigrants getting treated, like do they get treated better, worse, like are more racist things said, like I don't know, like I just think it would have been so interesting. And again, I do understand her whole like she can identify with them more, which is very valid and a very normal thing to feel, because I mean like if I were in her shoes I'd probably feel the same way. But I do think it would have been very interesting to see like a whole bunch of like other immigrant perspectives in this book.
I'd love to talk about on page 135, she talks about her dad having a job as a delivery man, and he talks about how, he says, my dad was working as a delivery man, the owner of the restaurant hired a new manager to oversee delivery. The delivery men, all immigrants, nearly all Mexican. And the guy was Puerto Rican, however, he was an American citizen, and he immediately became abusive, calling the delivery guys wetbacks, spics, and threatening to call ICE on them, yelling at them, getting up in their face. My dad fell into a bit of a depression, blah, 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 and she talks about like what she did to get the guy fired. And it felt 100%, I thought of like the power wheel, and so it's almost like although you're like of a similar like ethnicity and from like the Latin community, this person, although he was Puerto Rican, felt superior because of his citizenship, and so it almost just like puts him in a different place on the power wheel, although him like his culture of origin is very similar. What did she say? I don't remember. She's Ecuadorian?
Yeah, she's
okay. I couldn't remember. I'm like, we've interviewed so many people, but she's like, even though he's literally Puerto Rican, but he's calling all of like the Mexicans names and stuff, she's like, it just makes no sense. But I'm thinking immediately of the power wheel. He feels like he's superior on the power wheel because of his citizenship. It was very upsetting because I feel like everybody should have each other's backs.
This is one time that I actually really liked the author, was how she handled
Yes.
that.
It kind of reminds me of like, I don't know.
I've never seen All the President's Men. She talked about it.
All the what?
All the President's Men. She says, I've seen it, I just saw it for the 10th time, and so that's what made her decide to like do it. I've heard of it, but
I know.
It kind of reminded me of the way again, like, you know, from one Latin man to another Latin man, and like again, like the whole kind of like you're one and the same, but you're still like doing all like these horrible things to someone who just because he's not from your country, but you know, very very close. And again, you're an American and this person's not. You think you're better. It kind of reminded me in a sense of, I don't know, and I don't know how I want to articulate or describe this, but homophobia in a sense. Like, I don't know, I've seen and heard because I have a lot of friends who are like, you know, in the community, and I've like seen and heard, so like a gay man will hate on like a lesbian person, vice versa, or trans, and like whatever
it's
direction.
like projecting.
It is, and it's
I
like,
think he's projecting probably the racism he's experienced, and he's like, no, but I'm better than you guys, so I can be racist to you guys. Like, how's it feel?
right, it's like
And everybody should have each other's backs.
it's like, well, I'm just gay, I'm not trans, so like therefore like you deserve that. And it's like, because I've seen and like heard all this stuff, so it's just, it kind of reminded me of that in a sense, because like you guys are, again, like you guys, if we're being so like honest, like I feel like, I don't know, it's just like that is a smaller minority than the overall being straight or being from being of Latin descent is a minority compared to just being like white. So it's just like, and I'm not saying like obviously nobody has to get along. Not everyone has to like hold hands and skip down the road. But that just like, it's just like it's just like why? For like, what do you gain from that?
So on page 153, she says, if my server is brown, they're either, in my opinion, and if they're either, okay, so if my server is brown, if they're either, in my opinion, too young or too old or seem too tired for their job, I will leave a crazy tip for what I am, which is a freelancer. Now, I do not have that kind of money to be leaving people crazy tips, but I remember every person who ever left my dad a really good tip when we lived off his tips. I remember every one. You don't understand. I've been thinking about all those nice Puerto Rican assistants for the last 15 years. It was always the Latina executive assistants, very rarely white rich people in power. And I remember how he felt for the rest of the evening when he came home. And I think this is 100% like, I loved her for this because like, she talks about how like, she's like, as she says, if my server is brown, she's like, we have each other's backs. Like, she's like, I might not even be in the position to do this, but I have their back because I know what it's like to be, and she doesn't even know if they're an immigrant or not. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I don't even care. Like, I know that they've probably experienced like some sort of racism or systematic cultural like.
And that's why I say I would have loved to see, because she does mention minorities in this book a lot, so I would have loved to like see more like the minority like immigrant status. And again, I do understand why it's not in the book, because it's not like, she feels as if like she identifies with them in a sense that, hey, we're both minorities, like we're not white, like we have most likely received racism, but I just think it would have been so
It'd be cool if she like did another book where she kind of collabed with like different people who also like write that like are in those minority groups, so they can interview those and then kind of bring all of it together.
I wonder if she has any in her books.
She does. I don't
She
know if they're
does,
on
it
the
talks about
topic. Cause I know she wrote a lot about like music or something, right?
Yeah, I also made a note, this is kind of like a little left turn, but while we're talking about like Latin America, on page 166, I related this back to the class. So she talks about, Myra theorizes that Latin American culture is so imbued, I don't know how to say that, imbued with patriarchal values that they paint women as natural caregivers and nurturer, that women feel a greater responsibility towards aging parents, and women who are not able to balance or reject those values feel inescapable burden. And it just talks about how like the Latin America culture and how they value like their family values and who's like patriarchal versus matriarchal, and like people in the household and their responsibilities. And I also feel like I don't know, I maybe think about my own family, and I think a lot of the times it is the women in my family that are the caregivers towards our aging parents and like family members. Like I know my grandmother, so my mom's mom, her dad is 95, and she retired early to take care of him. So she moved into his house, and she takes care of him, and she takes care of her sister with cancer, and my mom takes care of her mom when she gets overwhelmed and all the things. And I just picture that like continuing and happening for me, and it's almost like I totally accept these values, and I don't feel it as an inescapable burden, but I can totally imagine it feeling like heavy and like I have no choice, because who's gonna take care of my mom if I don't? Luckily, I think my brothers totally would, but like, I don't know. It's just interesting to think.
Yeah, like I feel like this chapter really did highlight a lot of the like cultural differences and just like family.
Yeah, well, and then she like rejects it, and she goes, I used to slip antifreeze in my brother's coffee if he didn't help me take care of my parents as they aged. And then I'm like thinking about it myself, like, and she's like, I yelled at my brother when he was like 12 years old, and his report card was pretty bad. And he was in community college, blah, blah, blah. I was pissed. I called him on the phone and screamed at the top of my lungs that as an American citizen, he was wasting his opportunities. And if he ended up working at the Best Buy and not going to college, I'd never speak to him again. And then I like thought about my brothers, because like, I felt like I also had a similar view at one point. Like when my brother, he graduated high school last year, and he was hemming and hawing, what do I want to do? Like, do I want to just stay at this job that I'm at right now and just like work there for a little bit, and then like I don't think I want to go to college. And I was like, dude, my parents have set you up for success your whole life. I was like, you need a plan. And he's like, well, I'm not old enough for like this plan. And I am very similar to her. I was like, no, like they worked so hard to get you to where you are. You cannot disappoint them. Like you have to. And I don't know, I think like now looking back, I'm like, oh my god, I'm so mean.
What were you gonna give him manicures?
No, I wouldn't have killed
You're
him, but
good.
as like his older sister, I also was like, I feel it from an older sister perspective. I was like, and I'm 100% understand where she's coming from. It's probably way harder being like an immigrant family and stuff, but I even told my brother, like, I was like, no, like, you need to succeed for your parents. And he's like, well, what about for me? What do I want to do? And so that's just made me think of it.
I was gonna say, I don't know, like, I feel like, and I get the perspective, I have a completely different one, but of how, like, again, like, her whole thing is that the American opportunity, you have so many opportunities, like, again, like, with her brother, why aren't you taking them? Like, you better take them. And I beg to differ. I think if someone doesn't want to, or if they want to go out and do something that they know is going to kind of, like, ruin their life, like, let them. Like, they're all in all, at the end of the day, like, it's not your responsibility to, like, baby someone so much. It's not her responsibility to, like, you can give advice, and I don't know, I feel like at the end of the day, like, if people wanna go out and do something, like, that's all them. So, like, her brother, and, like, the way she gets so, like, pissed off about, like, people not taking their opportunities, and I get it, in a sense. I will never get it in the light of being, you know, an immigrant, because I was born and raised here, but I don't know, I think very differently. I'm like, if someone wants to go out and, like, do whatever, ruin their lives, not take their opportunities, like, they will see it one day, where they did have that opportunity and they didn't take it. They're gonna see it one day. It may not be now, and that's not necessarily her job to push that upon people, because again, just because she took her opportunities does not mean everyone else needs to take their opportunities, and they will see it one day, and if they never do, that's not her fault or her
I
burden.
think it's also, a lot of people can relate to this topic, because especially with having like the free community college right now, it's almost like the people that didn't have it are like, well, they feel entitled to push others to do it, because, well, we didn't have it, but like you do, so you should do it. And it just might not be everybody's path, but I
And you
think
can say that, like, you can recommend it. I think, like, oh, well, you should totally take that opportunity, but if they don't want to, I don't know, it's just not up to you to keep pushing, because
Right.
at the end of the day, it's their life, and if they wanna spend it not going to school, not taking the opportunity, doing drugs, like, at the end of the day, like, how much of what you say is really gonna change their mind? Like, it has to be up to them to do it. So, like, I do get where she's coming from, but I do think at certain points, I'm like, girl, you just gotta stop and, like, let it go and let it be, because it's not working. So that's my take on that situation.
Did you both read the postscript?
I did.
Okay, well, I think you'll like this. I was like, oh, I forgot about this. So she does make a comment about wanting to, well, at the time of writing this, that she wanted 175.
Okay.
That
It's just a
I would
quick, like,
rather
2 pages.
swallow a razor blade than try to change the mind of a xenophobe. I was so vulgar. But then she says that she's older now and on more stable medication and in therapy twice a week.
Oh,
I was like, I
gosh.
feel like you'll be very happy to hear that.
Thank God.
Like, I was like, I knew it was someplace in the book she
No,
said that,
I
but-
did read that, and then also, I'm just like, oh my god, this lady. It's just hard, because she talks about all the time, she's like, I do understand that I am, what was it? It's like, not the superior complex, but she's like, I wanna help everybody. What the heck is that called? Who
The
just said
savior
it?
complex,
Yes.
yeah.
She's like, no, I wanna help everybody, and then she's like, oh my god, I'm brainwashed, like, the American education system, it got me, like, I'm pushing it onto everybody, and like,
But then she loved her education. So
well,
it's just
and
like,
what was the chapter before that we had just read? She was like, I wanted to tell them to come see New York. That's what it was.
Yeah,
She's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
come see New York, leave Michigan. And then she was like, oh my god, I'm awful. Like, I'm doing what everybody, like, I'm so bad. And I think it is because, like, she 100% has problems within herself that she maybe wishes somebody would have saved her, that she wants to help, like, save everybody around her, and they may not want it. Like she said, the boys in Michigan had no desire to ever go to New York. They were like, why would I ever want to do that? Like,
and it
I
made
love
it
her.
hard, like, even moving state from state, like, that could be
Right.
very, like, hard. A hard thing to do. Like, I moved all the way up here from Florida, and, like, it is a
Mhm.
very, like, it was to me a very different, like, a huge culture shock. I was like, oh my god, like, this is very different than, like,
Right.
the Florida life. So, like, them not wanting to leave is not, like, a crazy thing. Even though it's not from one country, moving from, like, this state to this state when you have your roots in this state, it's a hard thing to
Michigan
do.
and New York are very different. I'm like,
Yeah, I don't know. So all in all, since this is our last little chit chat, I didn't hate the book. I do like the book. I would probably never read it again, if I'm being so honest. I don't know, I found her very, like, whiny and hard to, like, be with at points, but I think chapter 5 really did. I hated the book at first, but at first I was like, but like chapter 5, I don't know why that chapter stuck out to me, but I was like, alright, you know, I do resonate, like, this book is, I like it, so I don't know how y'all feel about it.
I like the first 2 chapters. 3 and 4 were a little harder to get through, I feel like, because she was a little
Whiny.
frustrating. I definitely liked chapter 5.
I loved it, the last 2 chapters.
And then, yeah, I liked how in chapter 6 it was a lot about her family, like specifically her dad with like all the like swimming stuff. And
It kind of like when you watch a movie and like the person's dying and they like reflect back on their
Yeah.
life. I did feel like it ended very shortly. I wish it would have been, I don't know, I wish the ending would have been a little bit more like, but
yep.
yeah, the last 2 chapters I loved.
I loved all like the informational pieces, like a lot of this was stuff that we've never heard about, especially with like 9/11 in Flint, Michigan. Those were 2 very influential chapters for me.
Yeah.
I liked hearing about her childhood, but I just felt like I didn't resonate very hard with her and like didn't really love all the talk. And I get it, it's real, it's like, it's very real and raw, and if that's what's for you, that's for you. But like all the talk about like self-harm and stuff like that wasn't really for me. I felt like, I don't know, it was just hard to like hear about, I guess, which is, I don't know,
Understandable.
like my perspective. But it threw me for a loop because I would feel like we were learning great about these people that were in the workforce and their experiences. And what is she's technically a 2nd generation immigrant because her parents are 1st generation immigrants. I really liked learning about all like the 1st generation immigrants and all their struggles. And then I feel like she didn't really talk much about hers, which I would have liked to hear a little bit more about. All she really talked about was her poor mental health.
Really? I don't know if I could have standed to hear about hers just based
Well,
off
just
of
like
her
if
mental
like
health
maybe in
alone.
like school, like if she faced like any discrimination or
Yeah.
trouble getting a job and things like
True.
that,
And I
like
don't
access to
think she
healthcare. She didn't talk about, well, she
Yeah.
is illegal, so
Right,
what
well,
was
I don't
her
think she would
access to
talk about
healthcare?
it because
Right,
I think because of her guilt, she
Herself,
doesn't
yeah,
wanna
yeah.
like write like, oh, this is how it was for me,
Mhm.
because she knows that others had it
right,
even.
yeah, like the
harder,
downward
yeah.
social comparison, 100%.
Yeah.
But I think I'm happy that I read it, and I'm happy that I know all the things that I was ignorant to prior to.
Right.
Like, I feel like that's very good information that we wouldn't have else learned about because it's undocumented immigrants doing research on other undocumented immigrants. And that's why we're hearing things so raw from her perspective, is because it's typically not done like that.
Right,
So-
like the text versus like actually like watching like a documentary or like reading
Right.
something that's raw, like this 10 times better than like textbook and like
Yeah.
all that information like this alone, and again I think I mentioned this last time, I thought it was even written differently, so like it is kind of weird or interesting to kind of get into because of like the way it's written. Like I thought it was going to be more of kind of like interview, like how we both thought of
Yeah.
interview
Just
versus
a series of
more of just kind of like story-ish, but also like not like nonfiction. But yeah, I do think it is a book that's like worth a read, and I'm glad I read it. I probably wouldn't read it again, but I am glad I read it.
Yeah.
I do think it's
Definitely would recommend, but I'd put like a little trigger warning on it.
Yeah, I was
Author
a little
has unstable
shocked,
mental health.
especially because the little, what do they call it, the postscript was in 2025. I'm a little confused as to why there isn't a trigger warning for self-harm.
maybe the blood on the front is kind of what
You know.
is that's
Maybe.
what it is. I don't know. And the blood on the back, which is interesting. And blood, sweat, and tears, but maybe it could be yours. Who knows?
I know she wanted us to talk more on like what we can do with kind of what we learned from the book, like how we can take that into our lives. I feel like that's kind of a tough one to answer.
I think it depends on what you, well, so the way I look at it, I looked at her question was, like career-based. So what I wanna do is be a school psychologist, and one of the people that I mentor, or that mentors me and I shadow, she works at Portland Public Schools, and I mean, obviously you don't ask like, oh, are you here legally, but a lot of
That would be a
her,
crazy thing to
right,
ask
well,
somebody.
so a lot of her students are like going through these adverse childhood experiences, and it's not really things that they can talk about, but they translate for their parents. And so I think it's just very important to make sure that everybody feels welcome, and they don't feel like they're judging them for their children translating for them or their lack of understanding for things, because like we talked about today, like the English language is very hard to understand for a lot of people. And I mean, like, if it's their first time in an American school system, it can be very hard to understand that too. So just understanding every child's gonna have very, very different needs.
I think for me, like, I want to go into human resource, so I feel like this definitely does translate to that job. It's just the exact ways on how to take it. I feel like it's more situational.
Well, they talked a lot about like workplace and industrialized racism too. So.
Yeah. And I think on like a more personal level, like I think the book kind of opened up like more layers of like oppression and power that like I wasn't. It's not that I didn't know necessarily, it's just that I never thought about it, like the whole
We're
like
ignorant to it.
retirement, like they have to take care of their family when they're older, like they don't, no one else will, like there's not really a choice there, and it's like that's not really something you necessarily think about when like in our culture, like we kind of like, you know, they have retirement, they have savings, or if they don't, like sometimes people will take turns watching them, but there's also more of a support system.
I think that's what I'll take too, most of all, is the power and the oppression aspect, because I, like, the whole, in like the first couple of chapters where maybe it was like in the middle of the book with like the whole like getting the medication like under the table because they don't have like health insurance or a document, they don't have like their stuff or whatever, and like how I was ranting earlier about how like, oh, I don't know, America kind of sucks. Like, I am very grateful for everything I have here, even though, again, I think we're all ignorant to certain privileges we have. Like when I was telling y'all about how like someone, and I not that I loved it, but it was just kind of like I literally felt like the table was reversed, where I was at the store and this black man just started hating on me because I was white, and I was just like, I just like stood there and I was like, oh my god, like is this actually happening? This never happened to me before, but it happens to people like this and other people all the time, every single day. And so I'll take that with me, because it's just like, you know, like it's just like that, the power and like privilege thing. It's like, I know I have it, I don't actively think about it, because why would I actively think about it, you know? Like it just, so like, I'll take, you know, that kind of, the things they had to do when I just walk into like Hannaford and pay $20 to like get my prescription, you know, like things like that. So like, I don't know, I think that's like what I'll take the most with me from this book, is just kind of like the whole power aspect and how it gets kind of ignored unless it like actually happens to you. I want to like kind of actively more like think about that in my day-to-day life with like the things I do. So that's what I would take from this book and like project it onto my own life. So yeah.
That sounds good. Sounds like a really good read. Just kidding.
Hit the button.